Google could be required to pay up to 500 million rand, approximately $27.29 million, a year in compensation to South African media outlets after the country's competition watchdog found the tech giant guilty of anti-competitive practices, while Meta and X also face fines. In provisional findings from a probe into market activities released on Monday, South Africa's Competition Commission said that Google's algorithm distorts competition between news media organizations insofar as it represents global news media in South Africa for search and top stories and underrepresents local language and community media. This inequity has materially contributed to the erosion of the media in South Africa over the past 14 years and will continue to do so unless remedied, the watchdog report said. To remedy this, it recommended that Google compensate the South African news media by 300 million to 500 million rand annually for a 3 to 5 year period, whilst putting in places changes to search that will sustainably create shared value with the media through increases in referral traffic. The watchdog will publish a final report later this year, with all parties concerned given until April 7 to submit evidence to support their case. Google said that it will review the reports in detail, but disagreed with the claim that it has taken disproportionate value from publishers. It wants Meta and Google's YouTube to improve the ability of news media to monetize their content on these platforms through increases in revenue share. If all these companies fail to implement these remedies within 6 months after the final report, a 5 to 10% digital advertising tariff or levy will be imposed, according to the report. Sudanese army says it has broken a near 2-year siege imposed by the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces (RSF) on the key southern state capital of El Obeid. The breakthrough came hours after the RSF signed a political charter in the Kenyan capital, Nairobi, to establish a breakaway government in areas under its control. The RSF and the army have been in a vicious battle for power since April 2023, with tens of thousands of people killed and millions forced from their homes. The war has split the country, with the army controlling the north and the east, while the RSF holds most of the Darfur region in the west and parts of the south. El Obeid, the capital of North Kordofan state, is a strategic hub connecting the capital Khartoum to Darfur. This is the latest army advance in recent weeks following the recapture of several parts of Khartoum from the RSF. There was jubilation on the streets as Sudanese soldiers marched into the city. A military spokesman, Nabil Abdallah, confirmed the gains in a statement saying army forces had destroyed RSF units. Finance Minister Jibril Ibrahim said the move was a massive step in lifting the RSF siege of El Fasher, the capital of North Darfur province, and would also allow the delivery of humanitarian aid to Kordofan. Sudanese civil society activist Dalia Abdelmunim told the Reporters program that the recapture of the city was huge and significant. American singer-songwriter John Legend has told reporters he is unfazed by a public backlash against his decision to perform in Rwanda despite the country's involvement in the war in neighboring Democratic Republic of Congo. I don't believe that we should punish the people of Rwanda and punish the people of other countries when we disagree with their leaders, he said after last week's concert in Kigali. In recent weeks, M23 rebels, backed by Rwanda, have seized the 2 largest cities in the mineral-rich east of the DR Congo. There is evidence Rwanda has sent 4,000 troops across the border to support the rebels. Hundreds of thousands of civilians are now destitute, having fled their homes, and shocking violence, including the rape of children, has skyrocketed. Critics argue that Legend could have made a powerful statement by pulling out of the concert, especially given his highly respected EGOT status. as someone who has won Emmy, Grammy, Oscar, and Tony Awards. Fellow Grammy winner Tems did pull out of a concert she was due to give on Saturday in Rwanda, saying she would never ever intend to be insensitive to real-world issues. But Legend defended his decision to headline the Move Africa event in Kigali, which was run by the Global Citizen NGO and attracted thousands of fans from across the continent. He said he was not being paid for the performance, but felt it was his duty to help grow touring capabilities on the African continent, which is often overlooked by international stars on so-called world tours. Taking a political stance would have been nothing new for the star. Legend is outspoken in his criticism of U.S. President Donald Trump. He also severed ties with former mentor Kanye West when he ran for president, suspecting it was part of a wider Trump campaign to siphon black people's votes away from the Democrats. Kenyan police officer who was on patrol with the International Security Force in Haiti has been killed in a confrontation with gang members. The officer, 26-year-old police constable Samuel Kitwai, is the first casualty suffered by the Kenyan-led multinational security support mission MSS. The force was sent to Haiti in June last year to help restore order to the country, where gangs have seized control of almost the entire capital, Port-au-Prince, as well as large swaths of rural areas. More than 5,500 people were killed in gang-related violence in Haiti in 2024, and more than 1 million people have fled their homes. The commander of the multinational force, General Godfrey Otunje, said Constable Kitwai had been injured in Antibonite, a region north of the capital. Gen Otunje said the officer had been immediately airlifted to hospital, where he died a short while later. His family has been notified. Jack Ombaka, the spokesman for the MSS, said in a statement sent to Reporters News Agency that Constable Kitwai was a fallen hero who was killed while fighting for the people of Haiti, while Kenya's foreign ministry said it was heartbroken by the loss of the officer. Mr. Ombaka said the officer had been shot by a gang member during a security operation in the town of Port Sunday. He added that the multinational force would pursue these gangs to the last man standing. On Monday, the U.S. ambassador to Kenya, Mark Dillard, expressed condolences to the family of the killed officer, saying that the United States is grateful for the courageous Kenyan police who are serving in harm's way to keep our world safer. Kenya has ramped up security along following a violent cross-border clash that left at least 22 people missing. Authorities revealed that the incident involved armed men, though not much details are available about the clash. Kenyan Minister Kipchumba Murkomen confirmed that they are coordinating with Ethiopian officials to locate the missing individuals. The violence allegedly broke out on Saturday near the Omo River between Ethiopian and Kenyan fishermen, according to Turkana County Governor Jeremiah Lomurukai. Local officials, quoted by news agency AP, also reported that 15 boats disappeared during the confrontation. Turkana North's Deputy County Commissioner George Orina, part of a Kenyan delegation, said they were unable to reach the scene, hence chose to seek information from survivors. The Kenyan Red Cross was also on ground to provide psychological support to survivors, according to news outlet Nation. In response to the latest violence, Murkomen announced plans to set up a formal border post where all individuals crossing into Kenya will. The AP argues the ban is retaliatory and infringes on First Amendment rights to freedom of speech and the press. The ban has meant that the AP, which hundreds of news outlets rely on, has been unable to access press events at the White House as well as Air Force One. The AP said it will continue to use the term Gulf of Mexico while acknowledging the Trump administration efforts to rename it. In response, the administration began clamping down on the AP's access to White House events covered by the pool of journalists that cover smaller events and report back to other media outlets. On Monday, George McFadden said he declined to deny the request from the AP for emergency relief because he did not believe the publication was suffering irreparable harm from the ban, according to CNN. The judge said the AP could access the same information from notes that other White House poll members had gathered. Still, during several points in the hearing, he called the ban discriminatory and problematic, ATN reported. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration is asking some of its recently fired scientists if they will come back to their jobs, including some employees reviewing Elon Musk's brain implant company, Neuralink. Multiple sources familiar with the matter told ATN. The FDA plans to rehire around 300 people in total, according to 4 sources with second-hand knowledge of the situation, following President Donald Trump's rush last week to fire employees at the agency responsible for reviewing drugs, food safety, medical devices, and tobacco. ATN could not verify the figure. Elon Musk, the world's richest person who oversees Neuralink and spent more than $250 million to help elect Trump, has been leading an effort to cut federal workers with his Department of Government Efficiency, including at the FDA. Thousands have been caught. It is not known who ordered the firings and now the rehirings, according to sources familiar with the situation, including several employees caught up in the turmoil. At least 11 employees working at the FDA Center for Devices and Radiological Health, which oversees medical device reviews, have received calls since Friday saying they could return to work on Monday, according to 8 FDA sources who spoke under condition of anonymity. Some of the sources were told the FDA would continue making requests to return throughout the weekend. If the scientists agree to return, they would represent less than 1/3 of the staffers dismissed about a week ago. The White House told reporters the administration had fired over 1,000 FDA staffers. The FDA firings last week included about 20 people in its Office of Neurological and Physical Medicine Devices, several of whom worked on Neuralink, reporters exclusively reported. It is not known if all of the fired workers reviewing Neuralink have received the return offer. California Governor Gavin Newsom requested nearly $40 billion in wildfire recovery aid in a letter to members of Congress on Friday. At least 29 people have died as a result of the raging fires in Southern California last month, with over 16,000 structures destroyed. The letter, obtained by Reporters affiliate KCRA, was addressed to House Speaker Mike Johnson, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, and Representative Tom Cole and Rosa DeLauro, the chair and ranking member, respectively, of the House Appropriations Committee. The aid would go toward immediate and long-term recovery work needed to rebuild lives and properties, according to the letter. The request includes $16.8 billion in public assistance funding, $9.9 billion for house and business repairs, $9.61 billion in business loans and grants, and $2 billion in low-income housing tax credits. The impacted communities have experienced widespread devastation, and the total impact of California's economy will take years to fully quantify. Newsom said in the letter, last month Newsom signed legislation issuing a $2.5 billion relief package to California, though he said in a news conference that he expects the federal government to reimburse the state. Before leaving office in January, former President Joe Biden said the federal government would cover 100% of costs for the 180 days of recovery. But since taking office, President Donald Trump, along with some Republican members of Congress, including Johnson, have suggested that aid to California could be conditioned on the state altering its environmental management policies. President Donald Trump fired Air Force General C.Q. Brown on Friday in an unprecedented shakeup of U.S. military leadership. Trump said in a post on Truth Social that he would nominate former Lieutenant General Dan Razin to succeed Brown. It is the first time someone has been pulled out of retirement to become the top military officer. Brown, the second black officer to become the president's top uniformed military advisor, was serving a 4-year term meant to end in September 2027. A U.S. official said Brown was relieved with immediate effect before the Senate confirms his successor. Democratic lawmakers have condemned Republican Trump's decision to remove the U.S. general. The Pentagon says the president will also replace the head of the U.S. Navy, Admiral Lisa Franchetti, as well as the Air Force Vice Chief of Staff. He is also removing the George Advocate General for the Army, Navy, and Air Force. It is unclear whom the Trump administration will pick to fill those positions. Trump's decision set off a period of upheaval at the Pentagon, which was already bracing for mass firings of civilian staff. The uniformed members of the U.S. Armed Forces are meant to be apolitical, carrying out the policies of Democratic and Republican administrations. Police officer was killed Saturday after responding to a shooting at UPMC Memorial Hospital, located just outside of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, where a gunman took several hostages and injured at least 5 other people before he was shot dead. West York Borough Police Officer Andrew Duarte, 30, died on the scene. The gunman was identified by authorities as 49-year-old Diogenes Archangel. No motive for the shooting has been released. Authorities responded to the incident at around 11 a.m. on Saturday, and police radio calls later reported that at least 2 officers were shot and the shooter was down. Speaking at the afternoon press conference, York County District Attorney Tim Barker said Archangel Ortiz entered the hospital carrying a bag that included a handgun and zip ties and proceeded to head the intensive care unit. UPMC confirmed that no patients were physically harmed. At least 3 medical staff workers and 2 other law enforcement members were struck by gunfire. All of those wounded are in stable condition. Duarte was a law enforcement veteran who joined the West York Borough Police Department in 2022 after 5 years with the Denver Police Department in Colorado, according to his LinkedIn profile. There have been several shooting incidents at medical centers and hospitals in recent years. According to the CDC, American healthcare workers are some of the most likely to suffer non-fatal injuries compared to other professions. While local and federal law enforcement are on the scene, investigating, Morris is still grappling with Duarte's death. We will go on a short break now, and when we return, we will continue with the rest of the stories. Please stay with us. 5 U.S. adoptees took off from Houston on Friday to reunite with their birth families in Chile for the first time after they were stolen as infants decades ago during the Augusto Pinochet dictatorship. I will finally get to meet the person that brought me into this world, and I get to see where I get my energy from and who I look like, said Ana Maria, 36, an administrative assistant from Minnesota and one of the adoptees on the flight. Mayer and the others were able to find their birth parents thanks to efforts from Connecting Roots, an NGO dedicated to reuniting Chilean adoptees with their birth families. Human rights groups estimate that thousands of children were stolen from their birth parents during Pinochet's brutal dictatorship, which lasted from 1973 until 1990, and adopted to foreign families. Pinochet encouraged adoptions to reduce poverty, while medical professionals, clergy, judges, and others are believed to have profiled of the adoptions. Connecting Roots was founded by Tyler Graff, a Texas-based firefighter and adoptee who discovered he had been stolen at birth and reconnected with his birth family in Chile. The NGO uses DNA tests from MyHeritage to reunite families and say over 100 families have reached out in the hopes of finding their children after a similar trip last year. Brazil's Supreme Court on Friday ordered the suspension of U.S. video sharing platform Rumble in the country, citing its failure to comply with court orders and mirroring a move made against Elon Musk's X last year. Rumble, a video platform favored by right-wing influencers, has refused to block the account of a Brazilian streamer living in the U.S. who is under investigation in his home country for alleged hate speech and spreading false information. Justice Alexander de Moraes, who also led the country's tussle with X, said the suspension will last until Rumble names a legal representatives for Brazil and complies with including the payment of pending fines, a court decision showed. Moraes has spearheaded the crusade on perceived attacks on democracy and political use of disinformation, particularly under the government of former President Jair Bolsonaro, drawing ire from those such as ex-owner Elon Musk in the process. Rumble, whose previous investors include a venture capital firm co-founded by now U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance, said in a statement it was exploring all avenues to challenge the decision. Rumble's U.S. counsel separately called the court order judicial overreach and said it disrupted the video platform's operations in Brazil, as well as those of U.S. President Donald Trump's social media platform Truth Social, whose video services rely on Rumble infrastructure. In a decision on Wednesday, Moraes ordered Rumble to appoint legal representation within 48 hours under risk of immediate suspension. Brazilian law requires foreign companies to have a legal representative to cooperate locally. Rumble previously cut access to users in Brazil in 2023, citing court orders to deactivate accounts for some creators. The platform, however, went back online in the country early this year. CEO Chris Pawlowski said Brazil had moved to rescind their censorship order on Rumble. Without explaining, Moraes' Friday's decision gave Brazil's telecommunications regulator, Anatel, 24 hours to suspend Rumble. A former Chinese aerospace defense executive has been expelled from the ruling Communist Party for corruption, China's anti-graft watchdog said on Monday, part of a sweeping anti-corruption purge across China's military-industrial complex. The former chairman of Aviation Industry Corporation of China, Tan Rusong, lived off the military sector and took a huge amount in bribes, according to the statement from the Central Commission for Discipline Inspection. The move comes after 14 military delegates were expelled from China's national legislative body in the past 2 years as part of a purge of the world's largest military, unprecedented in size and scale. This includes 4 generals, 8 lieutenant generals, and 2 major generals. At least 3 more aerospace defense executives have been expelled from China's top political advisory body. ATN could not reach Tan for comment. State-owned Aviation Industry Corporation of China did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Tan's case comes 3 months after a senior Chinese military official, Miao Hua, was put under investigation for serious violations of discipline. Miao had been the People's Liberation Army's leading political officer and sat on the 6-person Central Military Commission. The Army's top command body, headed by President Xi Jinping, China's 2 previous defense ministers, Li Shangfu and Wei Fenghe, were also expelled from the Communist Party in June for corruption. Li's case in particular was connected to corrupt procurement of military equipment, ATN reported. Many of those ousted earlier were connected to the PLA Rocket Force, an elite arm of the PLA that oversees its most advanced conventional and nuclear missiles. Analysts say that exposing deep-set grafts could take time to potentially show Xing long-running military modernization plans. Bangladesh students who were at the forefront of last year's protests that ousted then Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina are set to launch a political party this week, 2 sources with direct knowledge of the development said. The Students Against Discrimination SAD group spearheaded the protest that began as a student-led government against public sector job quotas, but quickly morphed into a broader nationwide uprising that forced Hasina to flee to India as the unrest peaked in early August. The students group is finalizing plans to launch the new party during an event likely on Wednesday, said the sources who did not want to be named as they are not authorized to speak to the media. Nahid Islam, a student leader and advisor to the interim government that took charge of Bangladesh after Hasina's exit, is expected to lead the party as convener, the sources said. Islam has been a key figure in advocating for student interest within the interim government led by Nobel laureate Muhammad Yunus, which has been at the helm of Bangladesh since August 2024. He is expected to resign from his current role to focus on leading the new political party. Islam did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Yunus has said that elections could be held by the end of 2025, and many political analysts believe that a youth-led party could significantly reshape the country's political landscape. Yunus has said he was not interested in running. Yunus' office did not immediately respond to a request for comment on the launch of the students-led political party. New Zealand's Foreign Minister Winston Peters will touch down in Beijing on Tuesday for a 3-day visit as relations between the 2 countries are strained after Chinese Navy vessels conducted live firings exercises in the Tasman Sea. New Zealand and Australia officials said that China had conducted live fire exercises in international waters between the 2 nations, giving little notice and forcing commercial airlines to divert flights. The 3 ships are currently around 280 nautical miles east of Tasmania, outside of Australia's exclusive economic zone, the New Zealand Defence Force said on Monday. New Zealand Prime Minister Christopher Luxon said on Monday the limited notice that China had given that it would undertake live firing exercise would be raised in Beijing. There is nothing illegal here in terms of they are compliant with international law, said Luxon. The issues for us is we would appreciate a little bit more advance notice, particularly on what is a busy air route. Peter's visit to China is part of a trip that includes stops in the UAE and Saudi Arabia, Mongolia and South Korea. In Beijing, he will hold talks with senior Chinese leaders, including Foreign Minister Wang Yi. Peter said last week in a statement that he would discuss with Chinese officials the bilateral relationship, as well as Pacific, regional and global issues that are of interest to both countries. China is one of New Zealand's most significant and complex relationships, encompassing important trade, people-to-people and cultural connections. We intend to maintain regular high-level political dialogue with China, Peters said. Peters has also voiced concerns that the Cook Island, an independent country in free association with New Zealand, had signed a comprehensive strategic partnership and other agreements with China without satisfactorily consulting with New Zealand. More elementary, middle and high schools in Korea are set to close this year due to the declining school age population amid the country's low birth rate. Among them, 43 schools, or 88% of the total 49, were located in provinces away from the capital, according to Education Ministry data submitted to Representative Jin Sung-mi of the Democratic Party of Korea Sunday. The figure is overwhelmingly higher than the number of schools closing annually in each city and province over the past 5 years. The number of schools closed in 2020 reached 33, then went down to 24 in 2011, 25 in 2022 and 22 in 2023, before bouncing back to 33 last year. By region, none of the closing schools were in Seoul, while 6 were in Gyeonggi Province. South Jeolla Province tops the regions with 10 schools planned to shut down, followed by South Chungcheong Province with 9, North Jeolla Province with 8, and Gangwon Province with 7 schools. Busan had 2 and Daegu had 1 school to close. By school level, 38 out of the 49 schools scheduled to close were elementary schools, accounting for the overwhelmingly majority, while 8 were middle school and 3 were high schools. Meanwhile, 112 elementary schools nationwide did not have any new students last year. According to the ministry data, as of last April, North Jeolla Province topped among the regions with 34 elementary schools, admitting 0 new students, followed by North Gyeongsangbuk Province with 17, South Gyeongsangbuk Province with 16, South Jeolla Province and South Chungcheong Province with 12 each, and Gangwon Province with 11 schools with no new students. According to the Metropolitan and Provincial Offices of Education, some 42 elementary schools in North Gyeongsang Province failed to accept new students this year, similarly to 32 schools in South Jeolla Province, 25 in North Jeolla Province, 26 in South Gyeongsang, and 21 in Gangwon Province. 2 projectiles were thrown at the perimeter wall of Russia's consulate in the southern French port city of Marseille on Monday, one of which exploded, a French security source said. It was not immediately clear if the projectiles cleared the wall. BFM TV said the projectiles were Molotov cocktails and that they landed in consulate's garden. Russia demanded a full French investigation and said the incident looked like an act of terrorism. State news agency TASS reported. No one was injured, the security source said. Consulate staff were kept indoors and police set up a security perimeter around the consulate. The incident in the southern French city took place on the 3rd anniversary of the Russian-Ukraine war. The explosions on the territory of the Russian Consulate General in Marseille have all the hallmarks of a terrorist attack. TASS quoted Russia's Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova as saying. President Vladimir Putin on Sunday appointed Kirill Dmitriev, the chief of Russia's Sovereign Wealth Fund, as a special envoy on international economic and investment cooperation. A presidential decree announcing the appointment of Dmitriev, considered the most U.S.-savvy member of Russia's elite, comes after the highest-level U.S.-Russia talks since Russia sent in forces into Ukraine in 2022. Dmitriev, who is 49, is an investment banker who studied at Harvard and Stanford in the 1990s and worked at U.S. firms Goldman Sachs and McKinsey before returning to Moscow in the early 2000s. along with Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov and Kremlin Foreign Policy Advisor Yuri Ushakov Dmitriev participated in the talks which took place last week in Saudi Arabia's capital, Riyadh. Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov, Moscow's point man for relations with the United States, said that a new Russia to U.S. meeting at the level of departmental heads would take place at the end of the week. The Wealth Fund said separately that Dmitriev's new mandate will include ties with the United States. The Russian Direct Investment Fund, RDIF, said in a statement that Dmitriev will continue to develop investment and economic cooperation with both the countries of the Global South and Western nations, including the United States of America. The appointment will give Dmitriev a more formal role in the Russian negotiating team. Putin currently has about 25 special envoys on various geographical areas and issues who report to him directly. Dmitriev and RDIF are under U.S. sanctions. Dmitriev was involved in negotiations for the release from prison this month of U.S. teacher Mark Fogel, according to an ATN source. That's the international news for today. I am Francis Neka. Thank you for watching. You can follow us on our social media platforms, X, formerly Twitter, at Atlantic TV Net, Facebook and YouTube, Atlantic TV Television Network, Instagram at Atlantic TV Network. Watch us live on our website, atlanticnetwork.tv. Peace and unity are the pathways to progress. Coming up next is business news. Please stay with us.